An explosive new documentary set to air on HBO this weekend is reigniting claims that Michael Jackson sexually abused children, allegations he has repeatedly denied. In Leaving Neverland, Wade Robson and James Safechuck accused the pop icon of molesting them when they were young boys. We will take a closer look at that controversy all week. The Jackson family will give their first on-camera reaction to the documentary tomorrow, and on Thursday, the accusers speak out only on CBS This Morning. In a moment, we will talk to the film's director, but first, here's a look at how the two accusers defended Jackson for years.
Secrets will eat you up. You feel so alone.
The two men who are the focus of the Leaving Neverland documentary, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, say Michael Jackson molested them repeatedly through their adolescence.
Every night that I was with him, there was abuse, while my mother was, next door.
Robson met the singer when he was 5 years old, after winning a dance contest in his native Australia.
Mr. Jackson?
In the documentary, Safechuck says he shot a Pepsi commercial with the King of Pop right before his 9th birthday.
Looking for me?
The men say Jackson warned them they had to keep the abuse a secret and allegedly pressured them to defend him in his sex abuse cases. Jackson settled a 1993 lawsuit and was acquitted in a 2005 criminal trial. In court and in TV interviews, Robson repeatedly denied being molested by Michael Jackson.
Well, what's he like?
What's he like? He's a good guy.
He's a good guy? No nonsense, no shenanigans?
But in 2013, after suffering several nervous breakdowns, Robson decided to tell what he claims is the real story in a lawsuit against the Jackson estate. Safechuck followed him a year later. Both cases were thrown out because of the statute of limitations. The men are now appealing.
He started talking about how much he loves me. What this is us, how we show our love for each other. The other people are ignorant and they're stupid. They'd never understand.
The Jackson family has denounced Robson and Safechuck as opportunists and admitted liars. His estate also sued HBO last week, calling Leaving Neverland a one-sided marathon of unvetted propaganda to shamelessly exploit an innocent man no longer here to defend himself. Filmmaker Dan Reed is the director and producer of Leaving Neverland. He joins us for his first TV interview about making this documentary and is here at the table. Dan Reed, very good to see you.
Thank you.
So already it's created a lot of controversy, and one of the main criticisms about it is that it's very one-sided, that you only focused on Wade and James and you got no reaction from the Jackson family or anyone associated on his side. How do you address that?
Well, the allegations are directed against Michael himself, and of course he's no longer around to defend himself. Mm-hmm. So we included the things he said while he was alive in defense of his behavior, during the 1993 and the 2003 to 2005 investigations. Mm-hmm. And he went on television and his lawyers made statements, and we included quite a lot of that stuff in there.
But did you not think it was necessary to hear from members of his family or his lawyers to react specifically to Wade and James?
Well, this isn't a film about Michael Jackson. It's a film about Wade, Robson, and James Safechuck, who were two little boys who, to whom this dreadful thing happened long ago. And it's the story of their coming to terms with that over 2 decades and the story of their families. Now, as far as including other eyewitnesses to that, there was no one else in the room, I don't believe, when Wade was being molested by Michael or when James was having sex with Michael.
So Robson and Safechuck both defended Michael Jackson in the past, including in 1993 when he was accused of sexual abuse, and Robson testified on his behalf at the trial in 2005. Why have their stories changed?
Well, what people find it difficult to understand, and what I've always, making this film, found it sort of difficult to understand and is very shocking, is the deep attachment that forms between the abuser and the abused with this kind of grooming pedophile activity. So both Wade and James were in love with Michael, and they even after the sexual activity stopped, they continued loving him, and he was, a close friend, particularly to Wade, for many, many years.
And they thought Michael was in love with them too. They say in the documentary.
Michael told them both, that he was in love with them, that they were
they were special.
They had an amazing future ahead of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dan, if you're going to be mentioning Michael Jackson, though, don't you have some obligation to get in touch with the people who have his interests, even though he's not here, obviously, because you're saying and you're repeating some pretty extraordinary things? Don't you have an obligation to talk to the family, even if you claim this isn't about him?
Well, what does the family know about the sexual abuse that happened? Do you think they know about the sexual abuse?
But when you're doing it, this is documentary, you
It is,
say,
yeah.
right? So when you're doing a documentary, don't you have an obligation to at least ask the question? Because you don't know what the answers to questions are until you ask them.
Well, we know that the family and the estate and Jackson during his lifetime and his lawyers all denied that any sexual abuse took place. And those views are strongly represented in the film. We give those views a lot of time in the film on screen, and we have people casting doubt on Wade's
But your
change
main
of heart.
characters denied something at one point, and then you ask them questions and they change their mind. Why not give the family that same chance to perhaps change their story, just as your two main characters did?
What was important for me was to have eyewitnesses or people who could add something to the story. I don't know that the Jackson family has any direct knowledge of what happened to Wade and James. I don't believe they do. If they do, then they should come.
This was clearly very difficult to watch with many disturbing details. How do you vet some of these details, though? Because most of this happened with two people in the room, according to these two men.
And that's the case with a lot of pedophile allegations. It's two people in a room, and often people only come out many years after the sexual abuse has taken place. I did a deep dive into the child sexual abuse allegations against Jackson in '93 and in 2003, 2005, and read a lot of the witness statements there and spoke to a lot of the investigators, and I didn't find anything that contradicted or cast any doubt whatsoever on Wade and James's accounts.
The documentary was also very graphic. Why did you decide to go that way? The details of it.
I think for many years Jackson got away with this image of being a bit of a child himself and being very affectionate with children, and I wanted to make sure that people understood this wasn't over-enthusiastic, kissing or cuddling. This was sex. This was the kind of sex adults have, but he was having it with a little child.
And he was known to spend a lot of time with children. Some famous, Macaulay Culkin, Corey Feldman, they have throughout the years denied any sexual abuse took place. Did you walk into this project objectively, or did you walk in already believing these two gentlemen?
I had no prior views about Michael Jackson. I had never taken a special interest in Jackson or in anyone famous. I come from a background of making films about terrorism and crime. And so I came to it with a completely open mind, and I certainly didn't want to stake my reputation on a story that didn't have a strong factual basis and that wasn't true. So I did look, throughout the 2 years of making the film, I looked for anything that could cast doubt or undermine Wade and James's story, and I found nothing at all. I found their stories to be very, very consistent. I found their families' stories to be very consistent with what they had told me.
Were they paid for the documentary, Dave?
They were not paid. They have no financial interest whatsoever, and no future past or present interest.
And one of the criticisms, too, that I've heard is that these two knew each other and that they got together with a lawyer and decided that they would, because you came to them, right? They didn't come to you. Is that correct?
This is a story I stumbled across. So I don't do stories about fame.
What do you mean?
Well, I was sitting down with a Channel 4 executive in the UK for breakfast one day, and we said, what are the big stories out there that people kind of think they know but maybe don't really know, and that have never been sort of conclusively examined? And Michael Jackson was one of those, and I had someone do some research for 3 weeks, and in a footnote in a forum was this reference to Wade and James litigating against the Michael Jackson estate. Okay. And that's how I stumbled across this story, and here we are now.
You reached out to them. Well, it has created a lot of conversation from people who haven't seen it, and I think people have to see it, I really think, before they can draw any conclusions on either side.
There's a divide between before and after watching the film.
All right, Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The documentary is called Leaving Neverland. It will air March 3rd and March 4th on HBO.